So I'm going to call this meeting to order. So welcome to this evening's Committee of Adjustment meeting. Members of the public, applicants, agents, and staff may be participating this evening either in person or virtually via Zoom. For those attending via Zoom, please note that it is our standard practice for members of the public to have their cameras off and microphones muted until it is time for that person to speak. Township staff can assist with muting microphones. Require assistance, please use the chat function and ask staff. I am also pleased to advise that this is being broadcast live on the Township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Note that the Township does not have the ability to edit the live stream or recorded versions of this meeting. Public meetings have been called and notice circulated in accordance with the Planning Act with respect to applications for minor variance and or consent. The purpose of public meetings are to inform and provide the public with the opportunity to ask questions and express views with respect to the applications. The format of the public meeting is as follows. Township staff will explain the purpose of the application and report on all correspondence received. Next, the applicant will present any further relevant information. Next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And next, members of the committee will be given an opportunity to ask questions for clarification of the application. After all comments have been received, the committee will consider the application with due regard to the presentations and views expressed this evening. The committee will then do one of three things. 1, approve the application. 2, deny the application. Or 3, defer the application pending receipt of additional information. Specified persons who have either provided oral submissions or written objections but disagree with the committee's decision on an application may appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal as entitled under the Planning Act. The deadline for an appeal of consent applications is 20 days within giving of notice, and for minor variances within 20 days of the decision date. When commenting on an application, please give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that the names and addresses of those individuals who speak this evening will appear within the meeting minutes, which are public documents. If you wish to receive a copy of the decision, please leave your name and address with the township staff. So going through our agenda, item B, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest from the committee? Seeing as there's none, we can move on. I'm going to call for a motion. So I have a motion before me for the adoption of minutes. So I have motion identified as COA 2023-38, moved by member Bossy, second by member Hiles, that the minutes of the August 15th, 2023 Committee of Adjustment meeting be adopted as printed and distributed. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor? We are carried. We are moving on. So we have an adjourned application. So would township staff briefly introduce the application and report on any written responses to the notice circulated for agenda item D1, which is an application for minor variance identified as A-33-22.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you, and thanks for everyone joining us this evening. The first application on our agenda is an adjourned application regarding the lands known as 1669 Peninsula Point Road. This is not subject to a public meeting, but an agent from M&T Consulting did submit correspondence on behalf of the applicants to seek an additional deferral of 2 months to provide further information. It is staff's understanding that the agent is in attendance at this meeting tonight. Next slide, please. So as committee may recall, the subject property is located in the northeast area of the township, approaching the end of Peninsula Point Road, with having frontage on the Severn River just south of the mouth of Sparrow Lake. The subject property is currently developed with a single detached dwelling, a private detached garage. It's as depicted on the screen here. So the original application committee, we recall from the July meeting, was regarding a reduced front yard setback requested to accommodate the addition to an attached deck. Just as a refresher, the subject deck addition was constructed in early 2022 without the benefit of a building permit. The applicant subsequently applied and received a building permit. However, it was determined that the front yard shoreline setback of the as-constructed deck addition did not appear to match the approved plans. So as indicated in table 1, the requested setback included with the application was 12.04 meters to the edge of the deck. Stairs were not contemplated. And again, the application was initially heard at the July 18th Committee of Adjustment meeting, where it was deferred pending further information. And it was required by the Committee of Adjustment that the application be brought back to this evening's Committee of Adjustment meeting for further consideration and a decision. Next slide, please. So this was the motion initially passed by committee at the July 18th meeting, outlining the supplemental information requested, including the revised proposal, including stairs that may be in closer conformity with the applicable policy, receipt of information regarding a detailed shoreline restoration plan, and receipt of information regarding the construction of a secondary shoreline structure. And then the direction that the application be brought back by the September 2023 Committee of Adjustment meeting for further consideration and a decision. So this is just a refresher of what the proposed site plan was. Staff did communicate the deferral with the applicants following the meeting to inform them of the supplemental information that would be required. Staff did communicate with the applicants to negotiate a deadline of September 1st to provide that supplemental information. Planning staff were contacted by a professional engineer with M&T Consulting Group on behalf of the applicants on August 29th, and a meeting was arranged for August 31st. Planning staff met with the engineer at that time to discuss the application and advised of the September 1st deadline. No further information is requested by the committee, and that motion has been received from the applicants since the September 1st deadline's passed. Therefore, in accordance with the motion passed by the committee, the original application is brought forward to the committee this evening for further consideration and a decision. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as a revised proposal has not been received, the policy analysis included in the staff report D23015 on the July 18th agenda, based on the information provided, it does not appear that the proposed minor variance is consistent with the applicable policy and would not meet the 4 tests for a minor variance in the opinion of staff as set out in the Planning Act. No additional comments from internal agencies have been received. Again, the committee was circulated the supplemental correspondence from the agent of the applicants. As outlined in the staff report and based on the limited policy analysis, based on the information provided, planning staff would recommend denial of the application at this time. Thanks. That's all I have for this application at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does the applicant or their agent have anything further to add to the application? I understand they're here this evening or possibly attending via Zoom. If you're attending via Zoom, please unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you would like. If you have a presentation, if you're there, you can share your screen. Is anybody here, the applicant or the agent? No. Okay. Going once. We had nobody. So I'm gonna move forward with that. There's nobody message or anything like that. Nope. So I'm gonna move forward. So obviously they've chosen not to participate this evening. There's as township staff had said, there's no public portion to this meeting because that was dealt with the last meeting. So I'm going to flip it over to the committee for further discussions. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? So I think just speaking, really the committee has 2 choices tonight. We've received all the correspondence and all that, so we can make a choice to we can make a choice and we can vote on the application and determine if we're going to either approve or deny the application, or we can defer the application pending receipt of additional information. So it's kind of up to the committee if there's any comments or anything, or what you wish to proceed with. So you, at this current point, you would be voting on a denial. So unless there's bandwidth or appetite for deferral at this time, that's how we'd be voting.
I guess I'll just say, from my perspective, the fact that nobody is showing up for this, I think we go with voting on staff's recommendation, since there was no buddy present to present anything further.
Okay. So I don't think there's any other committee discussion. Okay. So seeing as there's no committee discussion, I'm going to call for a motion. Okay. Just for committee, just so I understand this, I guess a question through township staff. Do we have to vote to approve and then vote to deny, or we can go straight to the deferral or denial?
To the chair, you can go straight to the denial.
Okay. I just want to make sure, just cross T's, dot I's. So I have a motion before us that is moved, or a motion identified as COA 2023-039. I'm going to have it moved by member Bossy, second by member Hiles, that staff report D23-025 be received, and that minor variance application A-33-22 be denied on the basis that the application as advertised is not consistent with the provincial policy statement nor conforms with the growth plan for the Greater Horseshoe and does not meet the 4 tests for a minor variance as set out in section 45(1) of the Planning Act. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, we are carried. So that's the end of that application. I'm going to move forward to new applications. So would township staff briefly introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated for new application identified as E1, which is an application for consent, identified as B-12-21.
Thank you, Chair. The next application this evening, as mentioned, is consent B-12-21 and minor variance A-11-23 Shiner for lands located at 3290 Beechwood Drive. Here we have a key map of the subject lands. They are located just west of the settlement area of Coldwater across Highway 400 here. The subject lands, which are the subject of the consent application this evening, and minor variance are highlighted in red, and the benefiting lands, being 3304 Beechwood Drive, are shown in purple. Here we have the 2022 aerial imagery. Again, the subject lands in red and the benefiting in purple. Each are developed with a single detached dwelling along with associated accessory structures. The surrounding uses to the subject lands include residential, or mostly residential lands. The subject lands are located within the Gloucester Estates residential subdivision located west of the town of Coldwater. The consent application is for the purposes of a lot addition, so they would be proposing to sever a portion of 3290 Beechwood Drive so that it can be merged with and added to 3304 Beechwood Drive. As a result of that proposed consent application, the lot area of the subject lands would be reduced below the minimum required by the zoning bylaw. To address that, the applicant has also submitted a concurrent minor variance application seeking to address that reduced lot area. There are some concerns with the proposed benefiting lands and their compliance with the township's clean and clear bylaw. So this is just a sketch that staff prepared based on the information provided by the applicant. The lands hatched here are what are proposed to be severed from the subject lands and added to the benefiting. This is to correct the encroachment of an existing driveway. It is the understanding of staff that there would be no further removal of vegetation or site alteration proposed as a result of this application. So as detailed within the staff report, the consent application is sought to correct the encroachment of the driveway onto the neighboring property. A concurrent minor variance application has been submitted to address the reduced deficient lot area of the subject lands, and no further site alteration or additional development would be permitted as a result of this application. There were no comments received from the building division or fire and emergency services or the Public Works Department. The township clerk did review the site inspection photos taken when staff were on site and did advise that the lands are in contravention of the township's clean and clear bylaw. Staff have recommended that the committee impose a condition on the application to address the contravention. There were also comments from the Severn Sound Environmental Association, which were provided with respect to matters such as natural heritage and source water protection. However, there were no objections to the application. For those reasons, the Planning and Development Department has no objections to the provisional approval of the applications this evening, subject to the recommended conditions. Just to quickly go over those conditions, these would only be subject to the consent application. There are no conditions recommended for the minor variance. In fact, the minor variance is a recommended condition essentially of the consent. So basically the first condition is that a reference plan be prepared to describe the lands which would be severed and added to the abutting. A copy of the in preparation draft deed be provided for review, that the severed lands shall merge with and not be separately conveyable from the benefiting lands, that the owner's solicitor shall provide an undertaking regarding the process that they will follow to ensure that the lands merge, an acknowledgement that this may include the requirement for a deeming bylaw, and that the solicitor shall provide the township with a copy of the registration within 3 months of the date of the registration. Planning Act approvals be granted to address the deficient lot area of the subject lands created as a result of the consent application. The benefiting lands be brought into compliance with the clean and clear bylaw to the satisfaction of the municipal bylaw enforcement officer. Taxes paid in full to date. Any fees or disbursements would be the responsibility of the applicant, and all the conditions shall be complied with within 2 years. So that's everything that I have for the committee. If you have any questions, please let me know. We do have a draft motion.
Perfect. Thank you. Does the applicant or their agent have anything further to add to the application? I understand the applicant. So I'm just going to have to ask you there is a microphone. We're going to turn it on for you, and you're going to have to speak into it. There we go. Thank you. So just under your name and all that, just so we know who you are. Yeah, it's unfortunately we're broadcasting live on YouTube, so we have to. So you could probably speak into that microphone right there.
Okay, thank you for hearing my application. In addition to the comment that my driveway encroaches on my neighbor's land, I want it noted that we moved from the city to Coldwater and to state property for privacy, and which we have when all the leaves are on the trees. However, this little triangular piece of land runs directly behind our home. And although the neighbor is very accommodating and has been there since he was 21 years old, we don't know what may happen in the future. If that property was sold, there would be nothing stopping somebody from, using the land which they own, which would be an infringement on our privacy. So I'd like that to be noted if possible. And thank you.
And just for clarification, you're the owner of the property, not the agent, correct?
Sorry.
You're the owner of the property, not the
owner of the benefiting property.
Okay, owner of the benefiting property.
And I'm acting as agent for Todd, which is the owner of the property. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So we'll move on then for persons present who either questions or wish to speak in favor or in opposition to the application, please address your questions through me. The applicant may be asked to respond to each party. When commenting, please give your name and address for the minutes. Can township staff please advise if there are any persons present on Zoom who wish to make oral submissions to the committee with respect to this application?
Thank you, Chair. There is no one registered this evening.
Perfect. Nobody in the crowd. Nope. So I'm going to move on. So I'm going to declare the public portion of the application is closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? Seeing as they're yes, yep, nope. If you got it. Okay. Okay. So that's good. So there's no further committee discussion. I'm going to call for a motion. So you understand all the conditions that
I wouldn't mind a clarification on the brought into compliance.
Okay.
What
yeah.
is that about?
Okay. So just to save some time. There was a question with regards to the compliance condition brought into compliance. Condition number 6, so the benefiting lands 3304 Beechwood Drive be brought into compliance with the clean and clear bylaw to the satisfaction of the municipal bylaw enforcement officer. I'm going to pass that over to township staff if they can discuss that a little bit.
Thank you, Chair. So basically, as a result of staff site inspection, there were materials observed being stored outside on the lands. So the township clerk reviewed the site photos, and essentially those materials will just need to be cleaned up and either, stored inside or stored elsewhere. So the property would need to be brought into compliance. It would need to basically address the contravention of the bylaw, be cleaned up and brought into compliance with that bylaw. And the township's municipal bylaw enforcement officer would go out and do an inspection once you had advised that the lands have been tidied up. If you need specifics about that, we can definitely chat after the meeting. Yeah.
Okay, so we're good there. Thank you. I'm going to call for a motion. So I have a motion in front of me identified as COA 2023-040, moved by member Hiles, second by member Kish, that staff report D23-021 be received, and that the matter of consent application B-12-21, the application be provisionally approved, subject to the recommended conditions included as attachment 5 to staff report D23-021, and that the matter of minor variance application A-11-23, the application be approved. I'm going to call for a committee vote. All those in favor, we are carried. We are moving on. That application's closed. So with township staff, so thank you. You're free to go if you wish. So would township staff briefly introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated for a new application identified as E2, which is an application for minor variance identified as A-07-23.
Thank you, Chair. The next application, as mentioned, is minor variance A0723 for lands located at 4414 Marr Lane. As you can see here in the key map, the lands are located along Upper Big Chute Road, approximately halfway between Severn Falls and the Big Chute, at the end of Marr Lane with frontage on the Severn River. The 2022 aerial imagery of the subject property shows the existing dwelling, the covered porch at the front. There's also a boathouse located generally in this area, along with a sleeping cabin and other accessory structures throughout the rear of the property. The applicant did construct an attached, covered, and unenclosed deck without the benefit of a building permit. In order to comply, was posted by the chief building official, which required the property owner to apply for and obtain a building permit. Upon review of that building permit application, it was determined that the construction did not comply with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. A minor variance application has been submitted to permit a reduced front yard setback for the attached, covered, and unenclosed deck. The minor variance which was requested is a reduced setback of 9 meters to the water's edge for the attached deck, whereas the bylaw would normally require 20 meters as the deck is more than 2 meters above grade. Here we have a site plan of the subject property, the deck identified here in the hatching outlined in red. At its closest point is 9 meters to the water's edge. It is a little bit hard to see on here, but I do have a better picture for the committee's consideration. There is an existing deck located within the front yard closer to the shoreline. As a result of discussions with the applicant, they are proposing to remove that deck and relocate that deck area further back from the shoreline to allow for the revegetation of this shoreline area. Just some elevation drawings. The dark gray is what was existing prior to this. And you can see the proposed decking here with the roof structure extending out from the front of the dwelling. These are some site photos taken by staff during our site inspection. You can see that existing freestanding deck within the front yard located right at the water's edge. The applicant has proposed to remove this decking, relocating its area into the footprint of the deck attached to the dwelling. That would allow for the revegetation and replanting of a vegetation protection zone along the shoreline of this property, wrapping around both sides of the dwelling, which face to the water. This photo here is taken standing on the docking, looking back at the dwelling, and you can see the covered deck in this area here. And this is a photo of the docking, which we will discuss a little bit later in the presentation. So as discussed within the staff report, the applicant has proposed the removal of that existing decking within the front yard so that the development can be brought into closer geographical proximity of the existing dwelling as required by the applicable policies. The consolidation of the existing development allows for the opportunities to restore the shoreline area with native self-sustaining species to allow for the establishment of a vegetation protection zone. It was also noted by staff during our site inspection that the existing docking may not be in compliance with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. Staff understand that this is a seasonal type of docking, and the applicant is reminded that for future seasons, the docking must be installed in accordance with the zoning bylaw, the Ontario Building Code, and the Trent Severn Waterway. There were no comments or objections received from the Building Division, Clerk's Office, or the Public Works and Fire and Emergency Services departments. There were public comments received in opposition to the application. A copy of those comments was provided to the committee in advance of tonight's meeting. Planning and Development Department has no objections to the provisional approval of the application, subject to the recommended conditions. Those conditions are pretty standard for this type of development, including that municipal taxes are paid to date, that the construction shall be in substantial compliance with the plans that are submitted with the application. There was also a condition here to ensure that the lands were comprised of one consolidated lot. Just due to the legal description, the applicant has already provided some correspondence to staff, which appears to suggest that that the lands are one property. But we would still recommend that the condition be kept in. And finally, that the property owners enter into a development agreement with the municipality pursuant to Section 45 9.1 of the Planning Act in order to establish the following: a vegetation protection zone to protect the existing vegetation on the property and restore the shoreline area vegetation to the maximum extent possible, provide for additional plantings of native and self-sustaining species, and our measures to protect and enhance the vegetation within the front yard up to the attached decks, the collection of securities for the implementation of the VPZ and retention in good condition for at least 12 months, provide for silt fencing and construction related measures as required to protect the immediate shoreline area during revegetation, and all costs associated with the agreement and the registration on title shall be the responsibility of the property owner. So that concludes my presentation. I do believe that the applicant's agent is in attendance tonight and also has a presentation that they would like to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant or their agent have anything further to add to the application? Please share your screen.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you. My name is Aresenault, and I'm a junior planner with Morgan Planning and Development. I'm here with one of the property owners, Jason Grieb, and we're available to answer any questions you may have after the presentation. I'll just share my screen. Morgan Planning and Development prepared a planning justification report on behalf of the owners of the subject property, 4414 Marr Lane, and they are requesting a minor variance to seek relief from the front yard setback and watercourse setback as set out in the zoning bylaw to allow for the property owners to obtain final approval for the building permit for a covered deck attached to their legal non-compliant dwelling. As was noted by staff, the deck structure is existing and we are looking to legalize the structure through the minor variance process. We prepared a planning justification report in support of the development and obtained a shoreline restoration plan, which was prepared by Terra Story Environmental Consulting, which recommends mitigation measures and plantings to enhance the shoreline. The subject property is located on the south shore of Severn River at the end of Marr Lane, which is a private right-of-way and is located approximately 3.3 kilometers northwest of Severn Falls. The property has approximately 46 meters of frontage onto Severn River and approximately 0.6 acres or 2,500 meters squared of lot area. Here's an aerial image of the property and the surrounding lands. As staff noted, the property is currently developed with a dwelling and associated covered decks and porches, sleeping cabin and outbuilding, carport, and 2 sheds, 2 shore decks, and a boathouse and a dock. Property is zoned shoreline residential, restricted access SR3, and designated shoreline residential in the township's official plan. The application is seeking relief from the front yard and watercourse setbacks to allow for final approval of the building permit for the extension of an existing covered deck. Approval of the application will allow the owners to legalize the structure as it exists currently. During pre-consultation with township staff, it was determined that a shoreline restoration plan and implementing shoreline development agreement would be required to satisfy provincial policy. Excuse me. And so specifically, the application is seeking relief from zoning bylaw table 6.2 to permit a minimum front yard to dwelling setback of 9 meters on the northeast cover of the covered deck, whereas 20 meters is required. And similarly, relief from section 334.8 to permit a minimum setback of 9 meters on the northeast corner of the covered deck, whereas the zoning bylaw provides a minimum setback of 20 meters from a navigable watercourse. So here's a look at the before and after of the exterior renovations to the attached covered deck, which was approximately 3 meters. The previous structure had become unsafe and was rotting. Here's a view of the development from the water, and the owner has agreed to remove the existing shore deck as shown here in an effort to consolidate deck space. Once this deck is removed, the area will be naturalized. The proposed front yard setback is consistent with the existing scale and setbacks of surrounding properties. As you can see in this photo here, so you can see that the neighboring properties to the west of the subject property have reduced shoreline setbacks as well and are heavily developed along the shoreline. You can also see existing vegetation, these white pines here, which buffer the view of the deck from the neighboring properties. Here you can see the extension of the covered deck and renovation that was done, including new deck boards and railings, as well as the extension of the roof overhang. Here is the site plan showing the development. As you can see, the setback from the water's edge is at the end of the retaining wall. Right here, it's 9 meters. The owner has agreed to remove one of 2 existing freestanding shore decks in an effort to naturalize as much of the shorelands as feasible. So this is the shore deck here that they are proposing to remove. Here's a look at the elevation of the expansion of the covered deck. You can see the gray shaded area is the original structure, and the lighter area represents the extension of the roof and overhang. Here's a zoning matrix outlining how the development meets the required zone standards and specific provisions that the variance is seeking relief from. As mentioned previously, Terra Story Environmental Consulting has prepared a shoreline restoration plan, which incorporates native plantings. Staff have recommended as a condition of approval of the variance that the owner enter into a shoreline development agreement to implement the restoration plan. So you can see a close-up of the 21 plantings which are proposed. In formulating the planning rationale for the minor variance application, Morgan Planning and Development considered the 4 tests, which are outlined in the planning justification report. Morgan Planning and Development is of the opinion that the proposed development is minor in nature, is desirable for the appropriate development of the subject property, the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaws maintained, and that the proposed minor variance meets the general intent and purpose of the township's official plan.
Perfect. Thank you. So we'll move on. For persons present who have either questions or wish to speak in favor of or in opposition to the application, you can please address your questions through me. The applicant may be asked to respond to each party. When commenting, please give your name and address for the minutes. If there's nobody in here, can township staff please advise if there are any persons present on Zoom who wish to make an oral submission to the committee with respect to the application? So if there...
Thank you, Chair. There were 3 members of the public who registered to attend via Zoom. If you want, I can just kind of call on them by name and see.
So we can just do it this way. If you're out there on Zoom, you can turn your camera and unmute and ask a question, and give you a couple seconds here. If not, then we'll just move on. YouTube, Zoom, yeah. So seeing as nobody's unmuted,
you're on it. Hello.
Hey, how's it going? Can I get your name and address for the minutes, and then you can ask your question?
Sure. It's Gary Gregory, and I'm at 4306 Dinner Time Rapids Lane.
I think we got that, and you're pre-registered, so you can ask your question.
Yeah, I mean, I just went through the process of tearing down a old cottage and building a new cottage, and then adding a separate garage, and then doing an application for a boat port. And I guess I'm concerned that we've got someone that obviously has come up and built a covered deck, and obviously with no permit. And my concern is if we let this go through, is this just something that's going to continue to happen on the river?
So I know there's more of a comment than a question.
It is.
So yeah, it does, and not to answer, it does put this whole process in a very difficult position when situations like this happen. It puts the committee, it puts everybody, staff, the planning consultants in a very difficult position. And I think I don't want to speak on behalf of everybody, but I think when you follow process and approve process, that's the best way. And when you when you deviate from that, it definitely puts everybody in an uncomfortable and very difficult position. And yes, as a committee, we would love everyone to follow process. Unfortunately, we're here tonight. We have to look at this application as though it wasn't built, and what our thoughts would be and how we would move forward with that. But yes, it does put us in a difficult position. So to kind of respond to your comment, do you have any other questions?
No, I just wanted to make that comment, and obviously, my concern is that neighboring people are just going to continue to do the same thing, and then just if they get reported, then they'll just, I guess, go through the same process that this person has. So to try to, I guess, just push it through, and hopefully everything works out fine. So.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, there's nothing more that I can say on that. It's definitely tough, and we hope that people follow process, and that's what it is. Is there anybody else out there that has a question that's joining us via Zoom tonight? If there's no further questions or comments, I declare the public portion of the application closed. We'll just have to mute that person. And then do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? Member Bossy, I'll put you first.
I guess through the chair, question to the owners. As part of the reconstruction, as there was brought to our attention, there was an expansion out the back side away from the water. Was there a bedroom added or anything?
Just I'm going to pass that over to township staff first. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Oh, yeah. No, sorry. It's all good. Miss Aresenault, are you able to just answer that question? That's what we're trying to get. Sorry.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. I'm not aware of any addition, and perhaps the owner would like to speak on that. But I can just confirm that the existing structures on the property do meet lot coverage. I'll just ask if Mr. Grieb would like to say anything else further on that.
Yeah, can I be heard here?
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to call, I had talked with Nick. During this construction, I guess I can speak to it myself. We went to the cottage was in fairly need of extensive repair. So part of when we were redoing the decking and all of that, we did do some repair work and reconstruction at the back and covered everything up with new siding and stuff, which has been discussed with Nick Ipioli, or I'm not pronounce his last name there, Chief Building Inspector. So all of that was fine for what we had done there.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Member Hiles?
Through the chair to the property owner and the representative, the work that you chose to do without a building permit, was that done by yourself or did you hire a contractor?
The work, we started the work in repair. We had all the work was done ourselves. We had drawings completed. I'll apologize on behalf of ourselves. My father-in-law is the other property owner who can't be here this evening, but during the repair construction, he had a major quadruple bypass surgery required, and we simply didn't honestly know. We thought we had the deck in the front there and that this wasn't going to be really an issue, which we've obviously learned. And we're put forth our best effort, like talking with Nick and Brad, that we went through the appropriate steps, and I do apologize to the committee and the township, but we've done our best to make it right and hire the ecologist and Morgan Planning and gone through that process to make sure everything's acceptable with what's been done on the property there.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing as there's Member Bossy.
Question through the chair to staff. Is there any concern with the number of outbuildings on the property?
Through the chair, to answer that question, the township zoning bylaw only regulates the maximum number of detached accessory buildings. As this application doesn't propose any new detached accessory buildings, the existing situation, may be considered legal non-complying if it exceeds that number. So the applicants wouldn't be permitted any further or any additional detached buildings, but what's existing could remain.
Member Kish.
Through the chair to the property owner or agent. I guess just for clarification for my own part, was there an existing deck structure on that particular water side? And if so, how large was it? I know you kind of did some restoration work, or that was the initial planning. To my understanding, we added 3 meters of new decking or covered area. But what was the kind of original that was already there?
Over to you, Miss Aresenault.
I'm not sure what the original square footage was. I'm not sure if Mr. Grieb knows, but it was extended an additional 3 meters from what was existing, and the existing deck was covered, so they extended both the deck and the roof line.
Just for clarity there as well, that the deck was all down the entire east side of the structure, as shown in the drawings, and then the roof overhang. So it was that 9 meters just out the front that was done. Everything else there was existing.
Member Kish.
So I guess just for further clarification, there was no deck out to the north side then, or?
Correct. Just the one that's at the water's edge, but not on the cottage.
Okay, so we essentially added a new structure to the water side, or the north water side of the cottage property. We weren't doing restoration work.
Ms. Aresenault.
Through the chair, if I can just share my screen, I can share the site
Sorry,
plan.
I thought I was unmuted. I don't know if anybody heard me there.
No, we didn't hear anybody.
I'll, through the chair, if that's all right, I'll just share my screen and we can look at the site plan.
That would be great.
So as you can see here, this light gray is what was existing previously, and this light white area is what was added.
So I guess to answer Member Kish's question, there was a portion of deck there on the north end side that was light gray, and we've extended it by 3 meters, I believe. Yep. Okay. Okay, I think that's Member Kish, another question?
Just one more question through the chair to the agent. I guess, in my opinion, using up more than half of required distance, so we're going down to 9 meters from a required 20, in my opinion, does not seem minor in nature. I'm just wondering how we got to the point where we're able to say that that is minor.
Over to you, Ms. Aresenault.
Thank you. Through the chair, we feel that it is minor in that it meets it blends in with the existing landscape, as well as with the shoreline development plan from Terrace Story. that it will enhance the ecological health of the shoreline. The reconstruction is aesthetically pleasing and was built with materials and colors that blend into the natural landscape. And it is buffered from neighboring views by trees and mature vegetation to the east and west. We reviewed the application based on the 4 tests and determined that it was minor, and that is outlined in our report. I'm not sure if Victoria, my colleague Victoria Lemieux, our senior planner, she has anything else that she wants to add to that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, just to chime in, just to further Ms. Aresenault's comments to Member Kitch. I think another piece that was important during our analysis of this application, and I know that staff also, I believe, was in agreement with our analysis, was really we were looking at this from an existing condition perspective, of course, and we do agree that, you know, the 20-meter setback that we see in the zoning bylaw, as it would have, for instance, applied to this property if there was nothing on there today, and they would have had to meet that 20-meter setback for a brand new build, for example. But here we're dealing with a situation with a legal non-complying dwelling and deck that was already there, and so the difference between the existing condition with that overhang is the way that we framed our view of the 4 tests. So thank you very much.
Member Hiles.
Through the chair to the property owner and the representatives. Before, if the deck had have just been replaced as it stood and the extension, the additional 3 meters put on, did it originally comply? Before the additional?
Through the chair, the existing structure did not comply. It would have been considered legal non-complying.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing as there's no further committee discussion, just comment that I have, it's better to follow process than to deviate from process, and it puts everybody in a difficult position, whether you're a neighbor, somebody down the road, whether you're staff, whether you're consulting staff, whether you're committee members. Puts everyone in a difficult position and is not ideal. If there's no other further comments, the planning consultant has already identified that they've understand the conditions based within their report. So I'm going to call for a vote. So I'm going to call for a motion first, actually, to put before me. And then, so I have a motion that's identified as COA 2023-041, moved by Member Kish, second by Member Bossy, that staff report D23-022 be received, and further that minor variance application A-07-23 be provisionally approved, subject to the conditions included as attachment 7 to staff report D23-022. So I'm going to call for a vote. So we're voting to approve. All those in favor? So we have a 3 no, 1 yes. So that means that's it. That motion fails. So I need another motion for denial, right? Follow process. Just sorting out the process here. We're just working on a denial motion here. So just bear with us for a minute or two as we pull this together.
To the chair, as I'm drafting this motion, for what reasons is the committee looking to deny the application?
Okay, so I'm going to pass that over for committee discussion.
So, in my opinion, this is not minor in nature. If we're supposed to consider this as not being a built structure already, I believe if this came to us with somebody asking to build this structure, we would likely be denying this. So that's why I voted in the way that I have voted.
Okay, so it's not minor in nature. Okay, is that a sentiment across the board? Sentiment across the board? Okay. Okay, just going to read this, so just hold on 1 minute and I will present it for everybody soon. So to do this correctly, I need a mover and a seconder. So I have a motion that's being shared on live too. So I have a motion that has been moved by member Kish, that has been seconded by member Hiles, that staff report D23-022 be received, and that minor variance application A-07-23 be denied on the basis that the application is advertised as not consistent with the provincial policy statement nor conforms with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and does not meet the 4 tests of a minor variance as set out in section 45(1) of the Planning Act. So I'm going to call for a vote. So all those in favor of this, it's moved by member Kish, second by member Hiles. Okay, so call for a vote. We are 3 yes, 1 no. So that is the end of that application, and we can move on. So would township staff introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated for agenda item E3, which is an application for minor variance A-12-23.
Thank you, Chair. The next minor variance, A-12-23, Thomas, for lands located at 4590 Trent Trail. Here we have a key map of the subject property shown in red, located along the Severn River across from the town of Gravenhurst, bounded to the east by Highway 11 and the CN Rail Corridor. The 2022 aerial imagery of the subject property, you can see that there is a number of trees on the property. Also, some clearing had started to occur at this time for the installation of the driveway, for which an entrance permit was issued. The applicant is requesting minor variances for a reduced front yard setback and increased lot coverage on a waterfront property to facilitate the construction of a single detached dwelling and detached garage. A pre-consultation meeting was held in August of 2022, where concerns were expressed by township staff with respect to the applicable policies in the reduced front yard setback, hazard policies related to flooding, and servicing measures. The applicants have retained a planning consultant who has submitted a planning justification report in support of the application. Township staff do not agree with the professional planning opinion of the planning consultant. The 3 minor variances that were requested were a reduction in the minimum required landscape buffer, a reduction of the width from 15 meters to 13.3 meters, a reduced front yard setback to the dwelling of 15 meters, and a reduced front yard setback to an attached deck of 13.3 meters, and an increased lot coverage from 15% of the lot area within 60 meters of the shoreline to 20.8%. Here we have the site plan that was submitted with the application. On the right is an overview of the entire property. You can see the proposed dwelling here, the deck located around the front of the dwelling, the septic system located in this area, the driveway, and the proposed detached garage. This snapshot here is just a zoomed in portion of the shoreline area. So you can see the dwelling, its setback along with the deck, just to give the committee a bit more context. The front elevation drawing. So if you were on the water looking at the property, this is a rough drawing of what the dwelling would look like. It does comply with the maximum permitted height provision. And just some site photos from staff's site visit. The property, as mentioned within the report, is vacant. It is relatively flat with a gradual slope from the road down to the shoreline. The existing driveway, which was installed with an entrance permit. The property has, for the most part, been cleared with the exception of the shoreline area. It appears that the clearing may have occurred last year, and since that time, the property has just sort of regrown with natural vegetation. So as detailed within the staff report with respect to the provincial policy statement, the lands are considered rural lands and resource-based recreational uses, including dwellings, are a permitted use. Section 2.2.1D speaks to ensuring that the linkages and related functions among groundwater features, hydrologic features, and areas and surface water features, including shorelines, are maintained. Section 3.1 directs development away from areas of natural hazards to mitigate risks to human health and safety and of property damage. With respect to this, planning staff note that the requested minor variances would bring the development closer to the shoreline and may interrupt the linkages and functions of that shoreline area when there appears to be sufficient lands to allow for the development to be set back further from the shoreline. The lot grading plan does not describe the extent of the two-zone floodway and flood fringe concept on the lands, which causes concerns for human health and safety and of property damage. The growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe considers the lands to be adjacent to a key hydrologic feature, being the Severn River. Section 4.2.4 establishes policies to ensure that the protection and preservation of a vegetation protection zone, which must be complied with for development within 120 meters of a key hydrologic feature. Section 4.2.4.1c requires a minimum 30-meter vegetation protection zone, and a subsequent section prohibits development and site alteration within the VPZ except in very specific circumstances. Unfortunately, none of those circumstances appear to apply to the subject lands. There was no justification or rationale provided for the need to reduce the minimum required 30-meter VPZ, and a site plan was submitted which appeared to suggest that there was sufficient room to accommodate the development setback further from the shoreline. Encroachments into the VPZ are only permitted where legitimate constraints prevent site alteration and development from occurring outside of that VPZ. The County of Simcoe and Township of Severn official plans both establish various policies to ensure the conservation of natural resources and the need to ensure appropriate development in proximity to those resources. The policies in both of these documents mirror the PPS with respect to natural hazards such as flooding, and there are sections to ensure the protection of ecological features and their functions and highlight the importance of a qualified professional in establishing an appropriate setback from the shoreline to ensure a vegetative corridor. Planning staff are of the opinion that alternative and more suitable locations exist on the subject lands where the development can be located to ensure the protection and preservation of those ecological features and functions. Concerns do exist related to the limits of the floodway and flood fringe as it was not described on the lot grading plan. For those reasons, planning staff are of the opinion that the application does not maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The township zoning bylaw establishes provisions to ensure a balance between the environment and development on the lands. Only limited development within the front yard is permitted and is scoped to uses which would require direct access to the water, such as docks or boathouses, and to ensure separation between the shoreline and habitable spaces to ensure that the immediate shoreline area does not become overdeveloped. Section 3.5 of the zoning bylaw does specifically exclude shoreline lots from benefiting from a reduced front yard setback where the existing neighboring development has a lesser setback than what is required by the zoning bylaw. This is in an effort to improve these situations over time and to have development appropriately sited on lands to maintain and improve the features and functions of the shoreline area. Additionally, Section 3.6 could not be confirmed to be in compliance as there was some information not included on the lot grading plan. As mentioned, staff are of the opinion that there is a more suitable location on the property to accommodate the development where it could be ensured that the protection and preservation of those ecological features would occur. Concerns again exist to the limits of the floodway and flood fringe. And for those reasons, planning staff are of the opinion that the application does not maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. There definitely is a transition of character occurring within these areas along the Severn River and in typical cottage country throughout the township, as more seasonal cottages do change and convert into more permanent dwellings. There is a result of increased development pressures to sustain year-round dwellings and the associated development. This is not unheard of, especially on Trent Trail. And in the face of those development pressures, the municipality needs to ensure that development is appropriately sited. And for those reasons, staff are of the opinion that the application is not desirable for the appropriate development of the lands. Given the impacts, the potential of impacts on the ecological features and functions, and in consideration of the other tests and applicable policies, township staff do not believe that the application is minor. There were no comments or objections received from the clerk's office, the building division, or fire and emergency services department. The public works department has some concerns related to existing and substantial drainage outlet that runs through the property, and did note that an easement may be required. CN Rail did provide comments with respect to development in close proximity to rail right-of-ways and mitigation measures in dwelling design and construction. So for those reasons, the Planning and Development Department is of the opinion that the application does not meet the 4 tests of a minor variance and is not consistent with nor conforms with the applicable policy. For those reasons, staff do recommend that the application be denied. That concludes my presentation. If there's any questions, happy to discuss.
Thank you. Does the applicant or their agent have anything further to add to the application? If you're attending via Zoom, please unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you would like. And if you have a presentation, you may share your screen. For the applicant or the agent attending, they're not here in person, so there. Mr. Young.
Hi. Good evening, Chair and committee members. I'm Ernest Young with Marie Poirier Planning and Associate at 44 King William Street, Unit A, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H1G3. We are the agent of the applicant. So thank you, staff and member, for reviewing the application. So regarding the application, we sent a request to the staff yesterday for requesting a deferral, and we would like to request the same from the committee. We have received the staff report last Friday around closing time. So due to the time limitation, we have not had sufficient time to review staff report thoroughly, and we would like to have the opportunity to review the staff report in detail, discuss the issue with the property owner, township staff, and prepare any additional supporting material. Therefore, we respectfully request the committee to defer the matter so that we can come back at a later date for discussion. So thank you again for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. For persons present who have either questions or wish to speak in favor or in opposition to the application, please address your questions through me. The applicant may be asked to respond to each party. When commenting, please give your name and address for the minutes. Is there anybody here that would like to speak? Yes. So we're just going to get you set up on a microphone. I know it might be better over here. If someone could turn on a microphone over here, that might be the best. And then you can just have a seat and you can speak into the microphone, ask your question, and we'll either get township staff or Mr. Young to there you go. You're all set.
Okay.
So just need your name and address for the minutes.
Barb Merker, 4581 Trent Trail.
Just say the name again, sorry.
Barb Merker, Murkar.
Perfect. Thank you.
4581 Trent Trail, across the street. Well, I have a couple of concerns. There is water that runs under there. We also have a lot of flooding in the springtime, most years. And if they're going to be that close to the water, they're going to be washed out unless they take really good precautions. Also, we were on community water, and I don't know if this is going to be a single family home or not. I know there's only two. I've met the owners, but I don't know if that's the way it's really going to be. I hope so, but who knows?
Okay, so the first question that you have, I think we can probably all agree that the township has identified flood concerns within that area, and our public works department has even determined that they will need to either look into an easement or look into something when they get more of a finalized application to look at with regards to the family size, or with regards to who's going to inhabit the thing. I think this is a single dwelling unit that's not a duplex or anything like that, single dwelling. So a number of people probably can inhabit that unit. Possibly could change ownership, but maybe Mr. Young can provide some additional information on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the owner is going to live there. So we believe he will be using it for his own family purposes, but since, again, due to time limitation, we have not been able to discuss the matter with the owner. So therefore, we likely to request a deferral so we could provide further information to justify the application. Thank you.
Don't know if that answered your question or not, but do you have any more? Is everything?
Yeah, well, there is, the flooding, and then there is a drain that goes, it's not working very well, but there's a drain, there's a creek that comes across our properties and goes under the road by the new property, and the sewer grate is way up, and it's finding its way underneath, not through the sewer grate. I don't know if that will affect it or not.
Sorry, I'm going to pass this over to township staff.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair to the member of the public, prior to any sort of development occurring on the site, the property owner would have to prepare a lot grading plan as part of their building permit application. And the preparation of that plan would account for things such as flooding, the grading of the property regarding any overland flow, any drainage easements, all of those sort of things would be taken into account as part of the design of the site prior to any development occurring.
Okay, thank you.
And I know you had asked a question about with regards to servicing, and probably more in lines of capacity and all that. That's all looked at as part of the process through the Public Works Department. And okay, I can assure you that a lot of those documents, and there is capacity in a lot of the systems just based on the documents and the annual reports that are provided and done by the township staff. Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Just hit that microphone, shut it off, or we'll get it for you. Oh, perfect. There we go. Any other questions? Oh, come on up. Just turn on the microphone there, and I'll need your name and address for the meeting minutes.
Susan Ballantyne, 4593 Trent Trail. I'm across the street from the property too. The only real concern I have is right on the corner of the property, right at the road, is one of the wells. So is there going to be any kind of guarantee to the rest of us that that's not going to be damaged while the construction's going on? And if it is, how are they going to prevent any kind of damage that's going to happen? And what kind of recourse do we have as the people who are living there?
Pass this one over to township staff.
Thank you, Chair. Township staff are aware of the sampling station that's located within the municipal road allowance in front of this property. As part of the review of the lot grading plan, the Public Works Department would be looking at that and making sure that there would be no impacts to that infrastructure. As the committee may recall, we did have another application previously this year where there was some public works infrastructure that was in place. And that was definitely a consideration of the township as part of any development proposal. The Public Works Department may choose to request some bollards be installed or some other mitigation measures just to ensure that there would be no damage to that infrastructure as a result of the development.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So seeing as there's no further questions, I'm going to declare the public portion of the meeting closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? Member Bossy.
Question to staff through the chair. You had shown, I can't remember, 3.5. Could you explain that in layman's? Does that mean that even though the ones on either side are closer, that doesn't give them?
Go ahead.
Through the chair to Member Bossy, that's correct. The township zoning bylaw does provide some provisions for cases. Let's say you were in town in West Shore. You were not on the water, you were on a residential lot. If the two dwellings on either side of the proposed dwelling were set back closer to the road than what the minimum requirement of the zoning bylaw was, so they had a lesser setback or they were non-complying, the zoning bylaw would allow for a reduction of the required setback for the infilled lot, just to sort of maintain that line of development across or along the street, just so you didn't have this sort of stepped back of one dwelling. Unfortunately, those policies don't apply to the shoreline area for instances such as this. There's a lot of historical development that has occurred. The development of shoreline dwellings at one point may not have been regulated, so they could have been built closer to the water than what is required today. And the policies exist now to sort of improve those situations over time and see that development set back further from the shoreline.
Thank you. Member Kish.
Through the chair to staff, just a question on the 3.13 landscaping and buffers. Just some clarification there. Does it basically, is that like the width on the shoreline side that has to remain as, I'll say green space, but there's probably a better word for that? Is that kind of what that's asking for? And if people are asking for a reduction of that, is that typically for like boat dock structures or driveways, or what would we be looking at there?
Or township staff.
Through the chair, the request in this case is the township zoning bylaw has the requirement for a shoreline buffer consisting of soft landscaping as is defined by the zoning bylaw, and that soft landscaping has to be a minimum width back from the shoreline of 15 meters, and it has to extend across, I believe it's at least 50% of the frontage. So in this instance, the applicant is proposing to reduce the minimum required width from 15 meters down to 13.3 in recognition of the setback of the proposed deck. There is some discussion within the PJR, though, that they were willing to increase the percentage. So instead of it only occupying 50% of the width across the shoreline, there was some discussion there of them going to 75. But obviously, the zoning bylaw is just a minimum. If you want to go beyond that, then you can do that.
Thank you. Is there, thank you for answering that question. we as a committee have been asked by the applicant to defer the application, or the applicant's agent to defer the application. Before us, the township staff have recommended a denial of the application. Is there an appetite to defer this application to allow the applicant and their agent to get their stuff together and resubmit? Seeing some head nodding. So I think we can start to prepare a motion for a deferral instead of a denial, because there was another thing we probably need to discuss. Is that fly bugging you too? I think another thing we need to discuss is typically applications when they come back a second time don't allow public commenting. I know I've been part of it in the past that there has been interest for this application. So I think if the application is revised at all, I think, my opinion, we should include the public to comment again, but it's up to that, and we'd have to include that in our motion as well.
I guess just a question through the chair to staff: if there is a revised proposal, does that automatically then redistributed for public comment, or do we actually need to include a provision in our deferral motion?
Over to staff.
Through the chair, it would depend on what the revision consisted of. If a greater variance was requested, then yes, absolutely, notice would be required. If a lesser variance was requested, it would be a bit gray. If the committee would prefer to see that the application be recirculated, I would recommend, as the chair said, to include that in your motion. And you're able to do that.
Okay. And then so I see some head nodding with that. And the only other thing that I can think of off the top of my head is, I think, very similar to an application this evening that was before everybody in July. There was a deadline that was established. I think it's prudent to put a deadline on this application. Would 3 months suffice, or would 2 months suffice to that? 1 month is just too much. It doesn't provide enough time. I would be comfortable, and maybe we could pass this over to township staff, but possibly the November meeting to get this completed by the end of the year. Just comment on that.
Thank you, Chair. You've actually answered the two questions that I had for the committee about the deferral motion. So yeah, I would recommend that November probably would be the earliest. Perhaps even December. Staff could be okay with the 3 month deferral as well.
Go ahead, Member Kish.
There's no building currently going on here, or nothing's been like the driveway, but there's a permit for that, so there's nothing non-complying there. We're not going against. So to me, if it's a longer duration, I think the reason to have the shorter duration on the other was because there was an existing structure that was being discussed. I think for this one, in my opinion, if the individual wants to take 6 months or a year, then that's up to them. Like, it's going to delay their building. So in my opinion, if we delay till December, I don't have an issue with that, but whatever we decide is.
Okay. Does anybody else have an opinion on length?
I would agree with that. I don't think we need to put a timeline on it. I think that they should take this time. Hopefully they were on the call for this entire meeting, and they're learning from some other experiences, and they do their due diligence and come back with a proposal that hopefully can be approved.
I think with putting a deadline on it, it allows the application to be brought back to close the application file. With the file, with one that's we've seen in the past, and I've been sitting in this chair or other chairs on this committee in the past, probably applications that have come 8 years ago. I believe the files are still possibly open for those files. So at least putting a deadline on that, at least it allows it to be brought back to this meeting and the file closed, and then we can move forward with life. So I'm fine with December. We can do that. Request to speak. Go ahead.
Through the chair, I just wondered if you maybe wanted to ask the applicant.
That was my question.
Mr. Young, are you comfortable with December, or are you looking for a little bit more time with your deferral?
Could we?
You made the request.
Could we request coming back around December?
Okay, so we'll put it. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm hearing that we got support for deferral. So hopefully we're going to work on the next minute or so and get a motion up in front of us. We'll just read through it as a committee. I'll just let everyone read through it on their own, and then if we're good with that, then we'll read it out loud. Would it be, and I'm just thinking out loud here, pending a revised proposal or revised planning justification? Would that, I don't know if that would, but I'm pretty sure that maybe the proposal fits into that. I'm just thinking out loud here. Or a receipt of additional, revised proposal or receipt of additional information. Sorry. Yeah, and then you're also looking, is it prudent for us to add in here too, that the information that we're looking for in the revised proposal with the included the floodway and flood fringe information? Or more than likely
to the chair, I might just suggest as described within the staff report, just to capture it all.
I'm good with that. Perfect. I believe we're good there. We'll commend you. It takes talent to type live on YouTube. So we have this before us. I'm going to need a mover and a seconder. So I got member Bossy is going to move the staff report. Member Kish will second the staff report. So I have a, sorry, not a staff report, a motion. So member Bossy's going to, move the motion. Member Kish will second the motion. So the motion before us is that staff report D23-023 be received and that minor variance application A-12-23 be deferred to a later committee of adjustment meeting pending the revised proposal or receive further planning justification as described within staff report D23-023, and that the application be recirculated in accordance with the Planning Act and the applicant pay the required fee, and that further that the application be brought back to the December 2023 Committee of Adjustment meeting for further consideration and decision. So I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, we are carried. So that ends that application. We are now moving on. So would township staff briefly introduce the application and report on any response to the notice circulated for agenda item identified as E4, which is an application for minor variance identified as A-13-23.
Thank you, Chair. So the next application is application for minor variance regarding the construction of a shoreline structure located at 1662 Max's Lane. I will note that no additional correspondence has been received other than the information provided by the Trent Waterway as included in the staff report. So as depicted on screen is a key map of the subject property. It is located in the northwest area of the township along the northeastern shoreline of McLean Lake. The subject property is currently developed with a single detached dwelling and associated residential accessory structures, as well as the subject shoreline docking structure that is partially constructed on the subject property. So the subject property is currently zoned shoreline residential 3, and as noted, the lands are currently developed with a single detached dwelling and associated residential accessory structures. The applicants originally received approval for the construction of a boat port in 2019. The structure is partially constructed. However, the applicants would now propose to just convert the structure to a dock and not proceed to construct the actual port portion of the boat port. So that would require the applicants, the construction of a boat port and a dock are regulated by different sections of the zoning bylaw. So to convert the structure from a boat port to a dock, the applicants have requested the minor variance as indicated on the screen. So they would be seeking a maximum finger width of 3.35 meters within the interior portion of the boat slip in 2 locations as per the plan submitted. Next slide, please. So as depicted on screen is a site plan, and I did also overlay the aerial image so you can kind of get an idea of the subject structure. I will note that the attached sea-doo structure, like docking structure that's attached to the northern finger of the dock is not part of the minor variance application, and further information would be requested by staff pertaining to that item. Next slide, please. So this is the proposed docking envelope. As highlighted in yellow, that is where the width portion of the minor variance is being requested to accommodate the sort of pointed portion of the boat slip. Next slide, please. Thank you. So staff did complete a site inspection of the subject property. So this is 2 photos of the subject partially constructed boat port now proposed as a dock. As you can see, the sea-doo docking structure attached to it is pictured on screen. I will note that the Trent Waterway has provided comments on the application as they are a upper tier governing agency on McLean Lake. So for the township to provide approvals to any docking structures, the applicants, any applicant on McLean Lake or the Severn River are required to receive approval first from the Trent Waterway. The Trent Waterway has expressed concerns with the application as the provisions for a boat port and a dock are different. So the applicants would be encouraged to connect with the Trent Waterway to either provide further information or amend their permit to reflect the minor variance. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as depicted on screen and as noted in the staff report, planning staff did note that we would also request further information regarding the use and construction and location of a subject accessory structure and attached deck on the subject property, as well as noted the sea-doo docking structure and information regarding soft landscaping within that 15-meter buffer of the shoreline as required by the zoning bylaw. So there's some pictures of that subject accessory structure for which further information is requested on the screen here. So as indicated in the staff report, based on the comments received from the Trent Waterway Parks Canada, being the federal upper tier government agency, planning staff are of the opinion that it's premature to conduct a detailed analysis until the items with the Trent Waterway have been addressed, and that a new permit be received for the proposal or an amendment for that requested change to the Trent Waterway be received. No further comments or objections were received from other internal departments. And as indicated on the screen, the specific comments were provided by the Trent Waterway and Parks Canada is that they do note that these types of requests have been an area of concern in the past, as some cases the supporting structure of a boathouse or boat port will not meet the Trent Waterway policies for a dock. So the Trent Severn Waterway would request further information from the applicant as an amendment to the previous Trent Severn permit, and or a new permit would be required to seek permission for the requested change. So due to the comments received from the federal government, as well as the noted zoning items on the subject property, Planning and Development Department would recommend a deferral of the application pending further information as outlined in the staff report. That's all I have for this application at this time, but available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Does the applicant or their agent have anything further to add to the application?
I'd like to speak, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure what.
Yeah, no problem. So we'll get you set up here. So why don't you come on up and have a seat, and we'll get the microphone set up for you, and you can add anything you wish.
Just remember name and address.
And just
okay.
Yeah, I think you're the owner, right, Mr.
I am the owner.
Okay.
I am Bruce Rogers, and it's my wife, Patty Maule.
Okay, go ahead.
So we hired a company to build it, TC Welding, and they did all of the drawings and they submitted it, and we got the permit, and we did everything. We think we did everything right. We have decided that I call it a roof. I've learned it's called a boat port. We have decided and had no idea that it would take on the legs that it has. We're just not going to put that roof on now. There's reasons for it. In March of this year, I had some major health issues and decided that I need to tighten up some of these loose ends, and not having this permit closed was one thing that I had on my list. So that was what spawned my call initially to the town, and that has brought us here today. I had no idea about the codes and the sections and the meters and the fact that it would be any different if it had a roof or didn't have a roof. Health is my number one priority right now. So this dock is not, to be very frank. And I'm not, first of all, I want to say I didn't address the chair and the committee, and thank you for hearing me tonight. So I don't understand it, and I'm just going to be very honest about that. If you look at the drawing where it showed the yellow parts, what I think has to happen is those yellow parts need to be removed, or they shouldn't be there for it to comply as a dock. So underneath those boards where those yellow parts are is a lot of steel that I paid a lot of money to have put there. So if you cut those out, it's going to jeopardize the integrity of the dock. It's also going to make it dangerous, because now there's a big square and our little grandson could easily fall in water between the boat and the dock. And I just think that that's dangerous, but I don't really understand the difference, quite frankly, between the way it is and what it needs to be a dock. But that's why we're here. I really want to get the permit closed. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll circle back to that question in the not too distant future with regards to this and all that. But for now, we'll just proceed with the public portion. And then if there's any questions that come up, I'll ask you, and then we'll bring back township staff to kind of answer that question. And I know there's a lot of other process that involves the Trent Severn waterway and docking and all that. And kind of I appreciate you looking, your focus being towards your health. You know, that's understandable. But on the other end of things, there's, we got to follow the process and all that. So we'll circle back to that in a minute. Okay. So for persons who are present, who have either questions or wish to speak in favor or in opposition to the application, please address your questions through me. The applicant may be asked to respond to each party. When commenting, please give your name and address for the minutes. Do we have anybody that wants to comment or provide questions on the application? Nobody registered via Zoom, so I think we're good. I don't hear anybody, so we're declaring the public portion of the meeting closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? Member Bossy.
Question to staff through the chair. So if Trent Severn Waterways approves this, does the township of Severn have different rules than Trent Severn when it comes to docks?
So we're going to pass that one over to Ms. Heel.
Thank you, Chair. The Trent Severn Waterway does have a separate permit review process. Our zoning bylaw tries to be in line with their policies, recognizing that a lot of the docking structures in Severn are located along federally regulated water bodies. I'm not exactly sure if they're exactly the same, but they do try to be consistent.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. I apologize for the wrong name that I said there before.
That's okay.
Is there any other questions? Yeah, Member Hiles.
Through the chair to the property owner, I just want to say I respect that you came up here and you just said, I'm not 100% sure. So we're all members of the community and we are learning as well. So thank you for that, being very transparent. And from what I'm hearing is the Trent Severn Waterway is first step to see if you can adjust your permit, and then hopefully maybe asking some questions and working with the township directly to talk about what timelines and what options you might have moving forward. Sorry, Brad, interrupt me if I'm stepping out of line, but moving forward with your original proposal or adjusting your permit, like depending on what your individual needs are and the needs of your family, maybe just weighing out what is best for you as an individual. That's just my personal sharing, and working with the township, and I'm sure you can have a conversation with them and say, this is what I'd like to do. This is where we're at. Can you explain some of this? Because we do that all the time. We ask lots of questions.
I've noticed. Yeah, I respect that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm Patty Maule and the co-owner of the house. This whole, I'm to the chair and the committee, confuses me greatly, because if you put a roof over a port, like put a boat port, how does that impact the waterways? Like, they gave us a permit to put the roof on. Okay. I'm unclear as to whether, because we have sea-doo sitting at the side, is that the issue? What is actually the issue? We did approach Brad and we did ask him, how can we, just not put the top on it? Basically, we don't have the money to do it right now either. Okay. So I don't know if you can keep a permit open for 25 years. Well, we can do that too. It doesn't really matter to us, but I'm just not clear, because Brad told us to take out those yellow portions. So we can take it out, we can take out the steel, and then it's okay. I'm just very confused as to the processes here. And if the Trent system already gave us the permit and okayed everything, how can that little bit impact anything? I don't get it.
So I'll give Ms. Hale an opportunity to speak. Depending what you have, every building is called different things, and there's different rules and requirements and all that. But I will let Ms. Hale jump in here and speak, or Mr. Brad, but depending what one wants to answer, it's all good in my eyes.
Thank you, Chair. I can provide, try to assist, and then if Brad has any additional comments, he can definitely jump in. So as provided in the Trent, I'll kind of go through, and forgive me if I've missed anything. Definitely feel free to jump in and correct me. So through the Trent Severn Waterway, the comments they provided, they note, similar to the township zoning bylaw, boat ports and boat houses are subject to different policies than docks. I will sort of remind the applicant and the committee that the permit for the construction of the boat port was issued in 2019. Since that time, the township zoning bylaw has also been updated through housekeeping amendments. So the original approval for the boat port still stands if they wanted to construct to the approved drawings. But when you're choosing to amend the permit, the current provisions for the amended proposal would still apply. So for a dock, the finger width is restricted to 2 meters. So the addition of those triangles, the highlighted portion, would increase that finger width to the 3.34, I think it was. So that's sort of where the minor variance request would be required to keep those sort of triangular pieces. So that's sort of where that kind of falls into play. Perhaps I might have missed some of your other question, but I hope that assists to provide some additional context. However, Brad, I'm not sure if you have anything additional to add to that as well.
Yeah, I think because there's different rules governing different things, and because there was I call it a modification or adjustment made to this process, that's why we're here, and we have to follow that through. So I think I think what I would do is, I think the committee is probably going to be in support. I haven't heard anything different of the deferral to this application, which we will vote on later. But I think what I would do is, if I were sitting in your positions, I would probably contact township staff and go through the process. And the Trent Severn Waterway probably is going to be the key here if you look to switching, because they're going to be the governing body that really provides that approval, and then it comes to us with that approval in place, and we move forward from there. And I think
so. Can I just ask one more question then? So if we decide, then we will put the boat port on, then what?
Then you proceed with that, and
then you come and look at it, and then everything's done.
Building permit closes,
and is there,
and that's it.
Okay. And is there any time limit on that?
That is a great question. I'm going to pass over to township staff.
Thank you, Chair. That's a question that I would encourage applicants to reach out to the building department directly to seek clarification on. I do note that there, I think, is an annual fee for keeping building permits open. I'm not exactly clear on what that fee is, but if applicants did want to continue just building to the approved plans, they could definitely reach out to the building department to seek that clarification.
So, Brad, would that be you?
No,
No.
You just,
Okay. Just the building department.
Yeah,
Okay.
the building department. So
You're the planner.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for your answer. So I think we're good to proceed. I don't see any further committee comments. So I'm going to call for a motion for deferral. So I have a motion before me that's identified as COA 2023-43, moved by member Bossy, second by member Hiles, that staff report D23-024 be received, and the application for minor variance identified as A-13-23 be deferred, pending further information as outlined in staff report D23-024. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor? We are carried. That ends the applications for tonight. There's no reports from official. There's no correspondence. Can I call for a motion for adjournment? So I have a motion before me identified as COA 2023-44, moved by member Heil, second by member Kish, that the Committee of Adjustment be adjourned at 8:20 p.m. on Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. Call for a vote. All those in favor? Carried. Good night.